I want to start you guys out today with the question of, are America's safest investments actually safe? So, the two most common considered to be safe investments are keeping your money in the bank, as well as government treasury bonds. So, those are the two that I'm going to touch on here at the beginning of this video. So, this article that I have here is, why are treasuries considered safe? It says there's two kinds of risk in the bond market: credit risk, which is the risk that an issuer will default. That's the one that we're going to talk about today. So it says treasuries are risk free in the first instance, credit risk. Despite concerns about the United States fiscal health, U.S. government bonds are seen as being among the world's safest in terms of the likelihood of their interest and principal being paid on time. The United States has never defaulted on its debt in the modern era, although there were some cases of restructuring in the 1800s. So if we look currently, 30-year Treasury bonds are getting about almost 2.5%. And as you could see from this uptrend, it's actually, the percentage has gone up a lot just in the last 3 months while we've been in the bear market. And the reason is the government's broke. And they're trying to raise these rates in order to entice people to basically lend them money. So if you think about it, buying a 30-year treasury bond, let's say you use a $500,000 investment, you're giving the government $500,000 for 30 years. They're giving you 2.48% interest per year. And then at the end of your 30 years, you'll hopefully get your money back. And as you could see from this article, Google other articles, they're going to tell you that this is a risk-free investment and it's totally safe. And I want to open your eyes and your minds to the fact that when I come over to the debt clock, I think it's a little bit beyond to say, some fiscal problems for the country. We're currently $30 trillion in debt, 91 million per citizen, and $241,000 in debt per taxpayer. I mean, from the perspective of understanding this and knowing this, it's really hard to think about lending anybody $500,000 that's even $3,000 or $5,000 in debt. If you think about it, banks wouldn't really do it. So, the government is essentially borrowing money from you, giving you an interest rate, and then when the bond's up, they continue to just raise more money by giving out more bonds. And, I pose that question, is this an investment that you really think is safe? So I'll come back to this in a minute. I want to go over to the bonds now. To the banks. So banks often talk about how the money is FDIC insured. So banks are FDIC insured up to $250,000 per depositor per insured bank for each account ownership category. So technically, there's insurance on your money in the bank up to $250,000 per account per person. So I'll ask the same question again. Is this something that you would consider a safe investment? So I want to read you guys down a few of these articles or tidbits that they have on here. So I thought this one was super interesting. So it says, I'm asking the question, how much money does the FDIC have on hand? And I was able to get this response from 2014. Yes, the federal government insures deposits in most institutions up to $250,000. But there is a problem with this insurance. The FDIC currently has far less money in its fund than it has insured deposits. As of September 1st, about $41 billion in reserve against $6 trillion in insured deposits. So this is back in 2014, and I can almost guarantee you that the numbers are worse now. So I did the division on that, and to give you guys a percentage, when you divide 41 billion by $6 trillion to include, and that $6 trillion is just if they gave 250,000 per person per count. It's not all the money that's in the banks. If you divide that by the $6 trillion, that's 0.0068% of the money that's currently out on hand, if there were to be an issue. So well less than 1% of the money do they have on bank for the deposit. So remember, you got to put everything in perspective. So these same banks, that have you take out mortgages, make you put 10, 20, 30% down for a house, because they want to make sure that you have the money and you're not going to default on your mortgage. They give you a credit score. They want to make sure that, they're only lending this money that they don't have to people that are going to be able to pay the money back. And meanwhile, they're asking you for a loan. They're asking you to keep your money there. And they have less than 1% of the money on hand. Not even to all of the money that's in there, but just to the money that's FDIC insured, which is crazy. So, as we ask the question of, is it safe, and what happens if the FDIC goes broke? Because, this is an important question. And this response seems to be really common. The FDIC backs up deposits, so if your bank fails, the FDIC will pay back your money up to their coverage limits. According to the FDIC spokeswoman, LaJuan Williams-Young, no depositor has ever lost a penny of insured deposits since the FDIC was created in 1933. So I ask again down here, can the FDIC fail? They give me the same response. Throughout its history, the FDIC has provided bank customers with prompt access to their insured deposits whenever an FDIC-insured bank or savings association has failed. No depositor has ever lost a penny of insured deposits since the FDIC was created in 1933. So I don't know if you guys are catching on to a theme here, but they're not answering the question. They're giving you a history lesson on the fact that they haven't failed to back up the money yet, because there hasn't been enough of an issue to this point where the FDIC has failed. But they won't answer the question as to whether or not that could happen in the future. It's like for baseball fans out there, you could say about the Cubs, since 1908 that they hadn't won the World Series in over 100 years. That's basically the response that the FDIC is giving you. But what happened in 2016? The Cubs won the World Series. And, as we go over to the SEC disclaimer, it's the most common one that you'll hear is past performance is not indicative of future results. So we get a lot of history lessons here from the Treasury and the FDIC about how they've never failed, or they've barely failed, or they shouldn't fail. But that has no indication, or it really has no meaning that they won't fail in the future, especially with the situation that we're currently living through. So I wanted to put that in perspective for you guys. I want to show you one more thing in terms of the debt and the world debt. So I think of the game Monopoly when I show this chart. Everybody knows the game of Monopoly. Everybody's played before. There's really 3 scenarios that you could run into with Monopoly. Either you win the game, you lose the game, or everybody quits the game. And I think the biggest pushback that I get when it comes to the treasuries and when it comes to the FDIC and the banks is that, hey, the banks, they have the relationship with the Federal Reserve and they always could print more money. And understood, that's true. That's what they've done in the past. As they just continue, the debts continue to get higher and higher and worse and worse. The banks continue to just create debt off of debt, and they just keep doing it. So why would that change? So I wanted to bring you guys to this calculator to show you what was going on with other countries around the world, just so you could see that, it's not just the United States that's in debt. It's every country that's in debt. So when you go down, you see, the United States, 30 trillion. China 10 trillion, Japan 14 trillion, Germany 3 trillion. And you go down and you'll see just a sea of red when it comes to the debt of all of these countries. Most of the biggest countries in the world are on here. I think, the only real big country that's not on here in terms of economy is, maybe Israel. And I Googled it, and they're also in debt. So it's not like Israel's the one that's cleaning up. And you think about it, it's like, in that game of Monopoly, it's like somebody always has to be winning. That's how the game works. But imagine that game of Monopoly if the bank was just taking everybody's money and, the bank was winning. We go back to those three scenarios of what's going to happen. And, you've got player one wins, you've got player two wins, or everybody quits. And that's where I come to you and say, these investments I don't believe to be safe, because that's where the conversation of the Great Reset comes into play, and why I think all of these countries and the central banks all want the same thing right now, which is to clean up the mess that they've made, start over, reset, and I don't really think they care who gets in their way. So I want to help to prepare people with some of my strategies of how I go about preparing, staying on your toes, and some of the amazing opportunities that are out there. Because while this is the case, and while we have this situation going on in the world today, all crises create opportunities, and there are a lot of amazing things that we could potentially get into on the ground floor right now. So I want to outline a little bit about my business strategy and kind of what I'm all about. So my mission statement is I want to empower people to create their own investment plans, help educate people on some of my processes and systems, and I want everybody to be confident and sovereign in making their own decisions. So you're not going to see me getting up here on these videos and just saying, you have to buy this, or like, you're stupid if you don't get into this. That's how we get into this situation to begin with. I'm going to show you things that I value. I'm going to show you why I value them, and I'm going to teach you some of the methods that I use in order to find investments that I find to be valuable. But I'm not going to be creating just like, picks per se. I'm going to be teaching you process, and I'm going to be showing you how some of these things work so that you're in a position where you can make your own educated decisions on which of these things you see value in and which of these things that you don't. I want everybody to have the opportunity to become financially free. That's what I'm about, as I believe that, we all have things that we want to do on this earth that are probably different from our 9-to-5 jobs. So I want to help create hope. I want to help give people the opportunities to make investments that they believe to be savvy, where ultimately they could have the potential to be doing something else later on in life, to really bring good to the earth and to be able to do all of the things that they felt like they were meant to do, and not just be stuck working the 9-to-5 job that they're working. So in this video, or in this series that I'm going to be doing, this week I'm going to be highlighting my 4-pronged long-term approach to investing. So I'm going to be going over my main 4 strategies that I do, kind of give you that view from the top right off the bat so that you guys could kind of jump in and start doing your own research. From there, I'm going to be going over, some of the history of the financial system and the Federal Reserve, the gold standard, and, some of how I feel like we got in the position that we're in to begin with. And then from there, I'm going to start doing videos and breaking down, different investments and, some of the opportunities that are out there on like a one investment at a time basis. What I want to leave you with, to close out this first video is, when it comes to blame, when it comes to investing, any financial advisor that you use, they're going to have some sort of excuse. If there's a crash, they're going to say to you, everybody lost their money, or, I couldn't really help it. I was doing what I was taught. This was supposed to be safe. I mean, you have to think like, what's your banker going to tell you if the FDIC goes under? Are they going to say, like, some of the stuff that I said to you earlier today? They're going to be like, well, it was backed by the FDIC insured. Like, I thought it was safe. It should have been safe. The one thing I could guarantee you they're not going to tell you is, I take responsibility. That was my bad. I should have seen through it. And, I'm going to tell you guys today, I'm going to help empower you to make your own decisions. But at the end of the day, it all falls on you, in terms of, being able to make your own decisions and, taking responsibility for what you're investing in. The majority of people in the world today really have no idea, the companies that they're buying, where they're putting their money. They don't know what the bank that they're giving their money is doing with it. They don't know most of these statistics that I gave you today. So it's on us, to move forward and, really start to build and, find our own opportunities so, that we could be able to make money and be profitable, even in some of the difficult times ahead. So that wraps up the first video. In the next one, I'm going to go over the first pillar and look forward to talking to you guys soon.